What is the secret of Monkey Island? A question pondered over by gamers and theorists alike since the release of The Secret of Monkey Island in 1990. A question posed many times by series protagonist Guybrush Threepwood on his quest to become a pirate, but he has never given a satisfactory answer.
I could tell you, but I'd rather make you guess.
A question that still remains a mystery to this day. Series creator Ron Gilbert, whom wrote and directed Monkey Island 1 and 2, has said that he had always planned it as a trilogy.
I had always envisioned it as this 3-game trilogy thing,
with the aforementioned secret to be revealed in the hypothetical third game, titled Monkey Island 3, The Secret Revealed or Your Money Back. Unfortunately, Ron unceremoniously left Lucasfilm Games just after Monkey Island 2 was released. While feeling he had learned a lot from his time at Lucasfilm, he felt that he wanted to put all he had learned into practice himself and run his own company while pursuing making games in a burgeoning area of the video game market, edutainment. He had shopped the idea of edutainment titles to Lucasfilm, but they weren't interested. So Ron left, and he took his secret with him. Without Ron at the helm, Monkey Island went in new directions, going from strength to strength under different directors, and eventually even a different company with the telltale entry into the series. Some of these games tried to make sense of and even tried to explain the unusual ending of Monkey Island 2. Some of them brushed it aside and continued the adventures of Guybrush and company unheeded. But the secret was never revealed. At least not the secret Ron kept to himself. Ron has said over the years he tried broker deals with LucasArts to buy back the rights to the series, or even to make his true Monkey Island 3A in collaboration with the company. But each time as he got close to finalizing a deal, management would change and the whole thing would have to start again due to corporate shakeups. Then, the unthinkable happened. In 2012, George Lucas sold the company he created from nothing to corporate giant Disney, and along with it went any hopes of Monkey Island ever returning again. Monkey Island is simply too small and not commercially viable enough to be of any real interest to a giant of media like Disney, swallowed into the dark abyss of IPs Disney eats for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and several helpings of dessert. Honestly, there was a time where I had given up all hope that we would ever see Ron's true sequel, or even a new Monkey Island game at all. Ron stated he wouldn't work on a Monkey Island game if he didn't own the IP outright. Ideas like crowdfunding money to help buy back the rights for Ron were floated around in the fan community, but even Ron himself said it was a pipe dream. Disney never sells anything.
I mean, the thing I have been told is that Disney does not sell IPs, right? I mean, that was pretty clear. Yeah, it's like Disney does not sell IPs.
Years passed. Things were bleak for fans of Monkey Island. But secrets are hard to keep. And on April 1st, 2022, on a certain April Fool's free blog, a certain secret that had been kept was revealed. It was simply too good to be true. 4 days later, the April Fool's was proven to be true. Ron announced that he and a team of Monkey Island alumni had been making a true Monkey Island 3A game for 2 years in complete secrecy, and that it would release later in the year, when they dropped a teaser trailer for Return to Monkey Island.
Ron Gilbert told me he'd never make another Monkey Island unless...
The joy I felt when I saw a post on some online outlet was that of childlike glee. I have to be honest, I genuinely wept tears of pure happiness at the news. The gameplay reveal trailer came at a later date, and boasts that Return will finally put the conundrum to rest, to finally reveal what the secret of Monkey Island is.
My name is Guybrush Threepwood. and this is a story about the time I finally found the secret of Monkey Island.
It is a unique time to be a Monkey Island fan. A unique time before the secret is out, where you can still make a stab in the dark at guessing what it all means. With the release date of Return literally being days away now, and with my own pre-order horse armor bonus ready and waiting, this video will be dated, unfortunately, almost immediately. But it will be nice in the future to be able to look back and see how close or far off the mark I am. It is slightly melancholic for me. For once Return is released and the secret is revealed, it will be definite and set in stone. We won't be able to theorise about it anymore. Well, I'm sure there will be plenty of new theories to unpack in the new Monkey Island knowing Ron Gilbert, so we still can theorise, but the secret itself will be out. Having just finished the first 2 Monkey Island games in well over a decade for a Let's Play series on this channel, it's a perfect time for me to gestate over the question myself, while it's still all fresh in my head, to put together the pieces I have puzzled and pondered over since I first played Monkey Island 2 LeChuck's Revenge as a child. I'm going to put my stake in the ground and reveal to you all what I believe the secret of Monkey Island actually is. I'd like to point out, before I get into it, that for a large part of this video, I will more specifically be talking about Monkey Island 1 and 2. While I do actually think Curse and Beyond have some relevance to the secret, I think because Ron himself didn't work on these games in any big way, it means that the answer to what the secret is itself truly lies in the first 2 games. But I will be referencing the sequels now and then and how they fit into the secret. Whether or not this is the original secret of Monkey Island Ron intended back in the early 90s, or what it has developed into now, I honestly think it doesn't really matter. Why? Because the core of the secret has remained the same. On the subject of the secret itself, he said that the original secret is just not that interesting now. And if I told you the secret now, you'd go, oh, that's kind of dumb. If I was ever to do Monkey Island 3A, the trick would be to take the core of the secret and build it into something that lived up to the hype. I would never create a new or different secret. That's unfair. Because of this, I believe the secret is still the same. And based on the fact the new Monkey Island 3A includes and doesn't shy away from the non-Ron sequels, I think it will actually perfectly encapsulate the whole series in a very satisfying way for fans. So, how do you work out any puzzle, mystery, or secret? You have to collect clues, lay out the facts, and then based on all the evidence, you draw a conclusion. During the making of this video, my own take on what the secret is has morphed and changed, and become more nuanced. Whilst I believe I was on the right track, or at least tangentially onto something, I think I missed the point, like many others, until I started to research other theories, interviews, and think about what the games mean to me and my life more deeply. I truly think that nothing in these games has been thrown in arbitrarily. It all has meaning, and it is all pointing towards something. There are 2 generally accepted fan theories on what is actually going on in Monkey Island, that the ending of Monkey Island 2 hinted at. One is that it's all a make-believe dream playing out in a young boy's head, and the other is that everything is happening for real, that Guybrush actually gets cursed by LeChuck at the end of Monkey Island 2. But how do these theories relate to the secret? This leads me to the idea that there are 3 layers to Monkey Island, and each feeds into and supports the next. On the surface, you have the story that is unfolding in front of our eyes, the narrative that is playing out before us and believed to be reality. Dig down to the second layer, and suddenly the illusion is shattered. It reveals that the whole surface layer and world is merely a story made up by an orphan boy playing make-believe with his stepbrother and other kids at a pirate-based theme park. The final and third layer, that is the point I think I and many others have missed, is the game we are playing itself, the impact it is having on us, and the lessons we are learning from playing it. Herein lies the answer to what the secret of Monkey Island is. But in order to fully understand its meaning, we need to dissect and look at the other two layers first. Starting with the surface layer, which in itself requires an abridged telling of the full narrative. Deep in the Caribbean, during the time of piracy, but in a world different from our own, a naive young man arrives on the shores of Melee Island. He makes his way to Lookout Point with a name and one goal in mind. Hi, my name is Guybrush Threepwood and I want to be a pirate. The old lookout tells him to achieve his goal, he will need to head to the Scum Bar in town and speak to the pirate leaders. On arriving to the bar, he meets the locals and learns about the evil ghost pirate LeChuck, whom is terrifying the Seven Seas, causing many pirates to remain landlocked out of fear. The three pirate leaders send him on a quest called the Three Trials. On completion, he will officially become a pirate. As Guybrush works on completing these trials, he meets the voodoo lady who gives Guybrush advice and a warning about his future. He also meets the new sheriff, Fester Shinetop, and many colourful, varied, and almost cartoonish locals on Melee Island. He solves several puzzles, and then as he tries to complete one of the trials in the governor's mansion, he ends up falling for the governor of Melee herself, Elaine Marley, whom also finds him kinda cute, though Sheriff Shinetop has taken a disliking to Guybrush and tries to drown him. It is revealed that the sheriff is actually LeChuck in disguise and he has other plans for Elaine. He kidnaps her on his ghost ship and takes her to his hideout under the mysterious Monkey Island, TM. Guybrush vows to rescue Elaine from the clutches of the evil ghost pirate LeChuck. He gathers up a crew and buys a ship and then sets sail for Monkey Island. On finally landing on the shores of Monkey Island, Guybrush quickly finds out that LeChuck's ship is anchored in a pit of lava beneath the island, and a bunch of cannibals tell him that the ghost pirate can be defeated by using a potion created from a voodoo root. That very root is locked away on LeChuck's ship. Guybrush finds the entrance to the underbelly of Monkey Island in, ironically, a large monkey head. Sneaking aboard LeChuck's ship, he requires the voodoo root, and upon bringing it back to the cannibals, who make him the root potion, he heads back to LeChuck's ship, only to find that it has left and returned back to Melee Island. LeChuck intends to marry Elaine and take her as his ghostly bride. Guybrush races back to Melee Island to stop this unholy union, although he finds that Elaine didn't need saving after all. She has her own voodoo root potion, and she already had a plan in place that Guybrush actually messes up. Then he loses his own voodoo root mixture as well. Finally, facing off alone against LeChuck with only his wits, Guybrush douses LeChuck in root beer from a convenient vending machine, which causes LeChuck to evaporate and then explode into an impressive fireworks display. With the ghost pirate defeated, Guybrush and Elaine share in a romantic moment while looking up to the stars over Melee Island. Several years later, with LeChuck defeated and the Caribbean in relative peace, Guybrush is older, more cocky, and a little more cynical. Things with Guybrush and Elaine haven't worked out though. Guybrush retells his LeChuck evaporating story ad nauseum to anyone who'll listen, much to their dismay. To live up to his ghost pirate defeating name and to prove to everyone that he is more than a one-note pirate, Guybrush vows to find the greatest treasure of them all, Big Whoop. But first, he must find his way off Scab Island. Scab Island is unfortunately under the thumb of tough guy bully Largo Legrand, who has placed an embargo on the island and stopped any ships from coming or going. Guybrush has a run-in with Largo on the bridge into Woodtick, a town on Scab Island, where Largo mugs Guybrush and leaves him penniless. Guybrush meets the locals in town and befriends a cartographer, Wally B. Feed. They all hate being under the tyrannical rule of Largo, so Guybrush sets out to teach Largo a lesson and drive him off the island. In the swamp on Scab, Guybrush discovers that the voodoo lady is now residing there and has set up a new shop. She helps Guybrush to deal with Largo by teaching him how to make a voodoo doll. And on collecting all the ingredients, Guybrush returns to the voodoo lady and she makes him a Largo voodoo doll. Equipped with this, Guybrush makes short work of Largo, driving him off the island, which in turn lifts the ship embargo, much to the rejoicing of the islanders. Just before he leaves though, Guybrush gloats to Largo that he in fact is the guy who defeated LeChuck, and has in his possession LeChuck's still wriggling and alive beard, a trophy he kept from their battle. Largo, who turns out to be an old trusted henchman of LeChuck, snatches the beard out of Guybrush's hand and runs off, stating that he has been searching for a living piece of LeChuck for years in order to bring him back to life. Largo shouts, "Look out, world! The most fearsome pirate of all time will soon sail the seas again." The voodoo lady confirms Guybrush's fears to be true, that LeChuck can be brought back to life, as Guybrush only destroyed his spirit form, not his body, which is safely buried far away in LeChuck's fortress out in the middle of the ocean. Afraid for his life, Guybrush wonders what he should do, and the voodoo lady tells him that in order to escape LeChuck for good, he should continue his search for Big Whoop. She explains that it is not simply a treasure, it contains a portal to another world. She gives him a book on the history of Big Whoop, which explains that 4 pirates, one of which is Elaine Marley's grandfather, found Big Whoop and buried the treasure on a place believed to be called Inky Island. They made a map and divided it into 4 pieces, each man taking one for safekeeping. With this in mind, and Largo's embargo removed from Scab, Guybrush charters a ship from Captain Dread with the intention to hunt down the 4 map pieces and ultimately lead him to Big Whoop. On arriving on Fat Island, Guybrush is immediately brought in front of Governor Fat, who is in cahoots with LeChuck. He imprisons Guybrush, though he quickly escapes. He makes his way to Booty Island, a party-all-the-time island where it's always Mardi Gras. Guybrush wins a spitting contest, and he also finds Elaine, whom is the island's new governor. Things are uneasy between them, and Elaine is annoyed to hear that Guybrush is only there to get her grandfather's piece of the map. She throws it out a window in a fit of rage, and it gets caught by a gust of wind. Guybrush chases down the map piece and then continues on his quest to find the other 3 pieces. Revisiting places like Scab, Booty and Fat Island, he solves many puzzles and gathers up all the pieces of the map. He brings them to Wally on Scab Island, who asks Guybrush to do him a favour and collect some things he ordered from the voodoo lady's shop, while he pieces together the map and figures out where it's leading. When Guybrush gets to the voodoo lady, she suddenly has a vision that Wally has been kidnapped, with the only word scrawled into his table being LeChuck. Guybrush sets out to save Wally and get back the map. Hitching a ride in a shipping crate with the right destination, Guybrush arrives at LeChuck's fortress. He finds Wally deep within the dungeon, hanging by his wrists in chains. Wally informs Guybrush that he has memorized the map, which is of an island known actually as Dinky Island. He also says a key to his cell is in LeChuck's throne room. Guybrush makes his way there, but it is a trap. Guybrush joins Wally strung up in chains, but this time they are hanging over a pit of acid where they will be lowered in after an intricate mechanism based around a lit candle goes off. LeChuck leaves them to their fate. Thinking quickly, Guybrush douses the flame with a well-aimed glob of spit. They are left in complete darkness and feel around the adjoining rooms. Guybrush remembers his book of matches. On lighting one up to better see their surroundings, he realizes that they are in a room full of TNT. Guybrush drops the match, and a huge explosion destroys half of the fortress and flings Guybrush halfway across the ocean. Wally's fate is unknown. Guybrush finally lands conveniently on the shores of Dinky Island. He meets an old friend, Herman Toothrot. Also, he finds Captain Marley's old parrot, whom helps lead the way to the final resting place of the treasure, Big Whoop. Guybrush digs the spot marked with an X and then blows through a concrete layer with some TNT he found in the surrounding forest. This leads him down beneath Dinky Island. He finds a treasure chest on a platform across from him. Upon swinging across to it, the platform crumbles and he is left dangling over a pit with one hand on the treasure chest. Elaine arrives 3 days later after hearing the explosion on Dinky Island from her room on Booty Island. She knows that Guybrush had to be involved. When she arrives, they share pleasantries and Guybrush retells his tale to that point to her. And then just as Elaine is about to help Guybrush up, his rope snaps and he plunges into the darkness below. Waking up in complete darkness, he reaches around and finds a light switch. Upon pressing it, LeChuck appears behind him in what appears to be a dimly lit tunnel. LeChuck taunts Guybrush by telling him they are brothers, and with a powerful new voodoo doll he has created, he states he will use it to send Guybrush into another dimension of endless torment and pain. He plunges the needle into the doll and Guybrush disintegrates. But it appears the voodoo doll is defective, as Guybrush reappears in the next room of the tunnel. LeChuck begins to chase Guybrush down and stalk him through the tunnel system. Guybrush springs into action and quickly uses several items he finds in the different side rooms of the tunnel to make a LeChuck voodoo doll. Guybrush finally confronts LeChuck, and in a last-ditch effort, he tears off the leg of the voodoo doll. LeChuck crumbles to the ground before Guybrush, as his limbs fall from his body. Guybrush has once again thwarted the evil pirate LeChuck. But LeChuck, now weak and unable to move, beckons Guybrush closer. Guybrush refuses, but eventually relents. Guybrush kneels down over LeChuck. "Remove my mask," LeChuck says. Guybrush does so, and then stares down upon a young black-haired man. Guybrush suddenly recognizes his creepy brother Chucky. They share a few moments, when suddenly an unusual-looking man in a brown boiler suit disturbs this reunion and states, "You kids shouldn't be back here." Guybrush and Chucky suddenly emerge from the tunnels as children into what appears to be an amusement park named Big Whoop. And then they are confronted by apparently their parents, scolding Guybrush for running off and thanking Chucky for hunting Guybrush down. They all walk together into the theme park to enjoy the many rides. Still on Dinky Island, Elaine wonders if Guybrush is alright and hopes LeChuck hasn't put any voodoo curses on him. LeChuck, however, has indeed placed a curse on Guybrush and keeps him for a time as a child in the Carnival of the Damned. After an unspecific amount of time passes, Guybrush somehow escapes the Carnival of the Damned. He finds Elaine again, and they get into more hijinks. They get married, and they continue on many years of joyous, swashbuckling adventures together on the high seas, meeting more wacky characters, and fated to, from time to time, do battle with LeChuck, who's always just a step or two behind. And there it is. That's the surface layer reading of Monkey Island. A series of never-ending adventures in the life and times of Guybrush Threepwood, mighty pirate. Whilst that is a simplified retelling of the Monkey Island narrative, it is relevant to give you that surface level reading so you can better understand the secret. But the surface layer alone is not enough to reveal the secret of Monkey Island. You have to dig down to the second layer to begin to understand what's really going on. In a way, I look at the unusual world, story, and characters of Monkey Island on the surface as the framing device for the nested story revealed within the second layer. So what is the second layer to Monkey Island? It is the other generally accepted theory which the ending of Monkey Island 2 pointed towards. that the story of Monkey Island is actually taking place in the present day entirely in the imagination of an orphan boy playing make-believe with his stepbrother and other kids at his favourite pirate-based amusement park. But how can I prove this all to be true? Monkey Island 2, luckily, is chock full of clues that point towards something else going on beneath the surface. But on replaying Monkey Island 1 as well, I was actually quite surprised at how much in that game was actually also pointing towards the twist ending in Monkey Island 2. It's almost as if it was all planned out from the start. Well, let's start with the amusement park and prove that with several pieces of evidence presented in both games. The best place to start, I think, is actually right at the start. The start of The Secret of Monkey Island, when Guybrush steps out from beneath an archway at Lookout Point. This is the first time we see Guybrush. This is his entry point into the world. On inspection, there is nothing really that special about the archway. It could have been the entrance to an old stone building that stood atop Lookout Point to shelter the lookout during the long hours they watched the oceans around Melee Island. It has long since fallen, but the archway remains. Even the wall we see could have been part of this structure before it fell. Even a different angle of the area that was made earlier in development doesn't reveal much else to us. But there is much more to what this archway represents. You have to look at it from the point of view of this being an amusement park. What do almost all amusement parks have in common? Entranceways, which more often than not contain an archway with marquees on them with the name of the ride or amusement park overhead. We see them everywhere, even in fictional theme parks. They act as a doorway to another reality in which we step from our world into the theme of the park. It acts as an escape from our lives, and for the few hours we are there, we can leave behind our worries and strife. It is the gateway to a new reality. Ron Gilbert has even teased on Twitter recently during the lead up to the release of Return, asking us, why does Guybrush appear beneath an archway? He even made a curious Star Trek reference shortly after. He had two big influences on him for the creation of Monkey Island: On Stranger Tides, a pirate novel by Tim Powers, and the Disneyland ride Pirates of the Caribbean. While the book gave influence to the characters and the magical voodoo element, the Pirates ride has served as the basis for the look and feel of Monkey Island, especially the start of the ride. If you watch any videos of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride now on YouTube, what do you go under as you first enter? A stone archway. But so, why is this archway important? Well, if you haven't figured it out by now, this archway is the entrance to a ride at a pirate-based theme park. This isn't the only archway that appears in the series either. The infamous ending of Monkey Island 2 sees Guybrush and his apparent family walking by an archway off in the distance. What does it say? Big Whoop Amusement Park. A fairly clear example of the types of entrance archways seen across the world at theme parks. I believe this archway is the actual entrance to the entire amusement park the story takes place at. Still not convinced? Well, I am only getting started. There is much more in the games to suggest that it is taking place at a pirate-based amusement park. There is plenty of signage around the world of Monkey Island. Signs for direction, signs for shops and stores, signs to tell you where you are and where you shouldn't be, as well as several posters and flyers for different things. While signs for direction and such are nothing new in the world, and definitely existed during the golden age of piracy, many of these signs in-game, when examined more closely, suddenly become a bit unusual. Many of the islands in the series have things like welcome signs. Let's take Dinky Island as one of the most striking examples. Guybrush flies halfway across the ocean and lands down on the shore of Dinky Island. hitting his head on a rock. Next to him on the beach of this supposedly deserted island in the middle of nowhere, on its own out in the ocean, is a welcome sign that reads, "Welcome to Dinky Island, home of the treasure of Big Whoop." Need I ask the question, why would there be a welcome sign on any deserted island, let alone one in the middle of the ocean during pirate times? This, like many other signs throughout the game, are there to introduce you to different areas of an amusement park. You are now in Dinky Island. Another several examples are the shop signs seen throughout the games. A library, a bar, a costume shop, a gift shop, a steaming weenie hut, and many, many others. Many of these shops and the wares they sell are enough to tell you that it's not set in pirate times. But let's look specifically at Stan's Used Shipyard, a big austere sign that says Stan's previously owned vessels. It has large, expressive gradient writing. It's trying to sell you something, trying to draw you in. It's an experience, which easily matches the size and insanity of Stan's over-the-top character, which is extremely similar to a telemarketer or a sleazy car salesman, or even a cowboy auctioneer. Not to mention the shop he owns in Monkey Island 2, Stan's previously owned coffins. This time, the sign seems even bigger, with bright flashing incandescent coloured lights all around it, and even a flashing neon open sign in the window. It seems a bit modern, eh? Even the voodoo lady, whom simply was a fortune teller in Monkey Island 1, has opened a new shop in Monkey Island 2, the International House of Mojo, for all your voodoo needs. It's in a swamp, and she has placed a sign on shore of the swamp to direct you towards her new building, which is a large wooden head floating out above the depths. It is also commercial and marketable, a fine package like you would get at a shopping centre or a theme park. What about some posters around the world? A wanted poster with Guybrush sporting a fake moustache? It just seems like one of those themed photos you'd take at a theme park that you could get done with a group or on your own. A jail cell that you can lock yourself in and pretend you're a prisoner to get a picture to show your friends after you go home. They often include dressing up in costumes that relate to the theme. So maybe Guybrush chose a moustache to feel older and look more like a villain. The most obvious example can be found when Guybrush discovers the legendary lost treasure of Melee Island during one of his 3 trials. Deep in the maze-like forest of Melee, the treasure is marked by a large sign with a plaque that reads, "This carefully reproduced piece of Melee Island history has delighted thousands of would-be pirates and their families for generations. Remember, there are other pirates on the island, so go easy on the treasure. Leave some for the next person." Not to mention the large marker beside it that reads, "Here lies treasure of such unimaginable wealth." Well, you'll just have to dig it up to believe it. This is clearly reminiscent of something you would see on a nature trail or a history walk, or even some tacky tourist site, or even in an amusement park, usually paid for by some local council. And the marker actually says it was paid for by the Melee Island Chamber of Commerce. If this was actually set in pirate times on a Caribbean island, why would such an unusual marker and sign exist? It is clearly yet another example of this being set at a themed amusement park. What about this closed for construction sign with tape and orange traffic cones? Why is that there? Another great example of a sign that proves this is an amusement park is the one on the door in that same alley. It reads, "Employees only." Who are the employees of this pirate island? Many amusement parks the world over will also feature a lot of directional signage. Almost too much of it. Obviously, the reason is to make sure people never get lost when trying to find their way around the park grounds. So much of the signage around the games and the modern history trail style marker are just big giveaways, among several other posters and flyers found throughout Monkey Island 1 and 2. It's clear that the signage is carefully considered, and a strong hint that this isn't the Golden Age pirate world we think it is. Speaking of the trials specifically, when looked at from the angle of an amusement park, they remind me of park activities. These are activities that park guests can take part in, usually to win prizes of some description, often taking place in the form of games or item searches. Let's take the legendary treasure of Melee Island as the first example. It's a treasure hunt, kind of like an Easter egg hunt or orienteering. The treasure hunt itself and the other two trials feel like theme park activities. Even the treasure map, which amounts to nothing more than instructions to follow a selection of dance moves, this feels like something that would be at a family fun day for kids to partake in. Do this funny dance and win a prize. It would make sense that only designated areas of the park would be for treasure hunting. Look at this sign in Monkey Island 2. It's a no treasure hunting zone, probably to stop would-be kids from searching for treasure around certain parts of the park. Funny signs aside, what is the prize for completing the treasure hunt trial? A t-shirt that says, "I found the legendary lost treasure of Melee Island, and all I got was this stupid t-shirt." Do I paint a convincing picture? Presumably, all trials that Guybrush completes would have netted him t-shirts. We only get two, the one from the treasure hunt and the other from defeating Carla the Swordmaster. The trials are just park activities, and the t-shirts are there as a reminder. Many theme parks and rides have t-shirts that you can buy. A famous ride at Cedar Point in Ohio called Raptor. It had a t-shirt you could get that said, "I survived Cedar Point Raptor." You could wear it then as a point of pride to say you were brave enough to get on the scary roller coaster. But what other possible amusement park activities could exist if Monkey Island is looked at the point of view that it is an amusement park? Well, there is a spitting contest where you can win a cash prize. Whoever spits the furthest wins. How about the fisherman who challenges you to catch the biggest fish, with the prize being a shiny new fishing pole? What about the spin the wheel in the alleyway? Call the right number and colour that it lands on, and you will win a selection of prizes, from tickets to a circus, money, and an invitation to a costume party. There are other puzzles and areas that could be considered all part of the amusement park activities. How about the grog switching in different leaky mugs? It's kind of like an egg and spoon race. Glass bottom boat tours, finding different pieces of a treasure map, the drinking competition, and so on. I think they are all very likely candidates for amusement park activities. But who, if anyone, would run all these activities? Well, park employees, no doubt. With an amusement park comes the need for employees and workers, people to run any of the shops, food stalls, and park rides. It would need maintenance workers who help keep the park running at tip-top shape, and if it was themed, like this one clearly is, it would need actors to play all the pirate-based versions of park guides, people who run the activities mentioned, costumed mascots, and just general characters who interact with park guests in many different ways. Amusement parks the world over have many of these types of people in their employ. After all, an amusement park is a business, and it needs employees to run. There are many of the Monkey Island characters who could fit this description in many different ways. Captain Smirk is a great example of an employee running an activity and an experience, while also being an actor playing a role. If we look at the sign outside his house, it says Captain Smirk's Big Body Pirate Gym. It then goes on to list the prices of the training. Sword training, 30 pieces of 8. Cannon firing, 160 pieces of 8, balls extra. Grappling hook, 130 pieces of 8, hook extra. This pricing list really reminds me of some activities at a park where you would pay to play, or like paintballing or go-kart racing. You pay to do the activity, then if you want extras like a better paintball gun or more pellets, you pay extra. Captain Smirk himself is also really playing up a character, the man's man, who will train you to be the best sword fighter in all the land, making small jabs at Guybrush as well, which is all part of selling the character and experience to the customer. He gets paid and he provides the activity and trains you in proper insult sword fighting. I think Carla and the other sword fighters you insult sword fight against could also represent more park employees who are part of and in charge of running the sword trial park activity. Carla acts as the final boss you face in a way before winning your prize. Then there are the other sword fighters you can meet around Melee Island. Maybe you have to defeat a number of them before you are ready to take on Carla, just like in the game. It's funny now, even in Disneyland, there is an activity called Jedi training, which is very similar to both Captain Smirk's training and insult sword fighting. It contains many actors under the employ of Disneyland that stay in character as the kids complete their Jedi training and then defeat Darth Vader at the end. Darth Vader makes some verbal jabs at the kids, and there is an actor playing a Jedi Master training them. It's all part of the act. And no, the irony of the meta nature of a Lucasfilm property now being used in a Disney amusement park isn't lost on me, especially considering Monkey Island was poking fun at the whole rampant consumerism and heavy-handed marketing at amusement parks. There are actually several videos you can watch online of kids breaking character or doing unusual things as they are on stage during the Jedi training, often to the bemusement of onlookers and even the actors playing the parts on stage.
If you turn to the dark side.
He wants you to turn to the dark side. What do you say? No. What does he say?
There is even a dialogue exchange you can have with the sword fighters that kind of mirrors this in Monkey Island 1. When confronted with a pirate sword fighter, Guybrush asks, "Why do you guys talk so funny?" Which seems like something a child would say to an overly energetic actor at a theme park. The pirate replies, "Pirate lingo, it's how everybody talked back then." He even scolds Guybrush for breaking character. "Come on, Guybrush, play along." This is fairly clear evidence that there is some imagination or make-believe going on. Whether the pirates you fight before Carla are actual park employees, or maybe even other kids playing make-believe with Guybrush, it's fairly on the nose and is definitely telling us that there is more going on underneath the surface. It's even curious that this pirate actually already knows Guybrush's name, as we never introduced ourselves to him. It's an interesting piece of evidence to bring up, I feel. Maybe even Carla is also a child playing make-believe. She does become a member of Guybrush's crew after all, so it would be pretty weird if a park employee started hanging around with a child. But I will expand more on this idea a little later on. So who else could be employees of the park? How about all the different shopkeepers? The Booty Island souvenir shop owner, the old guy that owns the shop on Melee Island, the costume shop owner, and even the voodoo lady. What about the bar and restaurant owners? The cook who owns Scum Bar on Melee Island, and the barman who owns the Bloody Lip in Woodtick. How about the spin the wheel guy? Or even the librarian? These are all people that definitely could be employees working at the amusement park. The spit contest runner is a perfect example of an amusement park employee. He is running a contest for park guests and has the perfect energy, rousing the masses to try their hand at the spitting contest, where the winner gets a cash prize. The way he speaks and the things he says, a ball of positive energy, your best friend, addressing you directly but speaking through you, dressed in a pirate costume, but it's colourful and bright, not like real pirate clothing, preoccupied with the arrival of a mail boat, the type of employee going through the motions in autopilot mode. Pretty obvious that he would be a park employee. Then there is the guys who appear in brown boiler suits throughout Monkey Island 2. We first see them on the swamp shore on Scab Island. There is a large shipping crate addressed to LeChuck's fortress from the voodoo lady's shop, and Guybrush gets inside. Suddenly, a man in a brown boiler suit appears on screen. He surveys the crate for a moment before talking to somebody off screen. He says, "Hey Rich, I could use a hand with this one." Another man in a brown boiler suit joins the first on the screen. They discuss the box contents, and then the first man says, "Well, let's get it on the truck." A truck? In pirate times? How strange. Anyway, when the men in boiler suits arrive with the crate to the location, they even have a run-in with Largo, trying to get a tip for going above and beyond. One of the men says, "You know, we usually don't deliver out this far," and then leaves empty-handed, remarking on what a butt Largo is. This isn't the only time we see men in boiler suits. One of the men returns right at the end of Monkey Island 2, when LeChuck and Guybrush are having their final confrontation in the tunnels under Dinky Island. The man in the boiler suit scolds the pair and says, "Hey you kids, you're not supposed to be in here." This is just before LeChuck and Guybrush emerge out of the tunnels into an amusement park as kids. It's very likely that the man is a maintenance worker or amusement park staff just doing his job. The brown boiler suits are a staple of maintenance workers and manual labourers the world over. It's an overall to save clothing from dirt or splashes one would pick up during a day's work in factories or working on machinery. Maybe employees like this have a way of getting around behind the scenes, such as the tunnels beneath Dinky Island. But this isn't the only time we see them. We first see these tunnels when making our way over to Rum Roger's hut off Fat Island through a waterfall, which is worth pointing out, by the way, that we turned off with a modern looking valve, just like a water feature at a theme park. On entering the hole in the rocks where the waterfall was, we are presented with these cement modern style tunnels with several pipes and fittings lining the walls. These tunnels are extremely reminiscent of the underground tunnels used by employees and maintenance workers at Disneyland and other theme parks to get around quickly without disturbing the park guests, whilst also providing maintenance to several aspects of their respective park. It goes without saying that the tunnels under Dinky Island are even more interesting still, providing much more evidence to prove we are in fact at a theme park. They bear the same cement design of those on Fat Island, and Dinky Island tunnels also provide us with examples of back rooms that you would likely see under many theme parks. Storage rooms where gift shop items, carnival game prizes and park food and drink are stored. A workers' repair shop where broken machines and park items come to be fixed and maintained. A first aid room where hurt and sick kids are brought to be given first aid. It might even have a lost and found section or a place where lost kids are brought by park staff to be reunited with their parents. There is even a maintenance elevator for heavy loads, giving employees a way to transport heavy items around the park quickly. More on that particular point later. Ron has said that he loved the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland as a kid. He often wondered what it would be like to get out of the boat and walk around behind the scenes. These tunnels feel like a great example of that train of thought. Speaking of trains, in the repair shop in the tunnels under Dinky, we see another telltale sign that this is an amusement park. There are small tracks in the corner. They look like tracks that you might see on certain rides in a theme park. You board a moving vehicle like a train or a boat, and then you are slowly shown around a themed ride. Not to mention roller coasters. Maybe these tracks came from a slow ride like Pirates of the Caribbean. If we take it that the archway on Lookout Point is an entranceway to a ride, let's call it Exploring Melee Island. Then, if we look around the first scene, what else do we see? The lookout himself, his fire, the wall, the archway, and if you look down to the bottom right of the screen, what do we see? A stairway that leads down to Melee Dock. But what if we look at it from the point of view of a theme park ride? They could be tracks, train tracks, for the ride we are about to go on. If we pull out to the full view of this side of Melee Island, look at that pathway. Maybe that is all just tracks of the ride. It leads down into the dock of Melee. Even look at the dock itself. It's a really thin, wooden, train track looking bridge. Even as Guybrush moves across the dock, the way the screen slowly pans with Guybrush as he walks along. It just feels like a slow ride plodding along at a theme park. And then into the Scum Bar. All the pirates inside even seem like they are just too perfectly placed. They are even moving as an animatronic diorama would. As we scroll on by into the kitchen, we are on a ride with Guybrush, on tracks. We are looking at a pirate-themed ride in motion, not dissimilar to Pirates of the Caribbean. The pirate diorama in the Scum Bar is an interesting concept or idea. As many times throughout the series, you will return to an area to see the same bustling location suddenly devoid of life. Like a diorama and animatronic would be running on tracks, and then it would go through its program before finally returning to its starting position. Often a location hidden from the viewer, kind of like a cuckoo clock. While I don't think Elaine is an animatronic being, I think it's interesting to point out that you have a large argument with her in her new mansion on Booty Island in Monkey Island 2, and then she throws the map piece you want out the window. Guybrush swiftly exits the room to chase after the map piece. But if you immediately turn around and go back into Elaine's room, suddenly she has disappeared. But where has she gone? We don't see her pass us in the hallway, and the only other exit we can actually see in the room is the window on the second floor. It's unlikely that she jumped out, so I think it lends credence to the idea that some of the characters in Monkey Island may not be people actually at all. But I digress. This is merely an interesting idea that may or may not be relevant to the overall story and second layer. Take a trip with me in your imagination. What are other possible examples in the first two games of potential rides and attractions? How about a ghost train underneath Monkey Island? The many mazes of the series. How about this treehouse? How about the cannibal village? How about those glass-bottom boat trips with Kate Capsize? LeChuck's Fortress, maybe it's like a haunted mansion. We also see at the end of Monkey Island 2, Guybrush and Chucky's parents make reference to another ride. But where there are park rides and attractions, there is a need for maintenance. That leads me to my next point, ride maintenance at theme parks. Often when we visit theme parks, food machines are on the fritz, our favourite rides might be out of order or under maintenance, meaning we just can't go on it that day. The barriers we see in the back alley behind the church on Melee Island are an example of this. But those barriers weren't there in Monkey Island 1, right? They appeared only in Monkey Island 2, while you are in the tunnels beneath Dinky Island. Or at least, we think we are under Dinky, until we take the freight elevator up to the top. We step out through a door, which by the way, was labelled employees only. Suddenly, we are back on Melee Island. But how? Because this is a theme park. These tunnels connect several locations, so the employees can quickly get around to different park areas and rides as needed. What do we see in the alley this time around? We see that Guybrush can't make his way out into Melee Island properly. It's blocked off by cones and tape, which read, "Closed for construction." Do I paint a convincing picture? Melee Island is a ride, and it's closed for construction. Maybe some of the tracks were pulled up and brought down to the repair shop to be fixed, and that's why they are there. What else is in the repair shop? Ah yes, the iconic Coke-based grog machine. Aside from being a clear anachronism, more on those later, this grog machine represents a story beneath the surface layer that happens in the amusement park, and then behind the scenes afterwards. Well, we all know that two exist in the first two games. In Monkey Island 1, we see one next to Stan's office at his used shipyard. Then in Monkey Island 2, we see another one in a state of disrepair in the tunnels underneath Dinky Island. It's not made 100% clear, but it is heavily implied that these two grog machines are actually one and the same. So looking at the surface layer and what happened to the grog machine in the story, Guybrush rushes back to Melee Island to stop the wedding and rescue Elaine from LeChuck, and through a series of mistakes, Guybrush loses Elaine's voodoo root potion and then his own voodoo root potion as LeChuck proceeds to punch Guybrush around the island. Guybrush lands down inside the grog machine, and then with a little help from LeChuck, it spits out Guybrush, several pieces 08, and a bottle of root beer. Later on in Monkey Island 2, Guybrush meets a beat-up grog machine in one of the back rooms in the tunnels under Dinky Island. He remarks, "Brings back painful memories." So I think it's reasonable to assume these are both the same machine. But how does it play into maintenance at a themed amusement park? Simply put, let's say Guybrush and LeChuck are kids play fighting at an amusement park. Guybrush gets the bright idea to steal a bottle of root beer from a drinks machine to spray his brother with in order to win the fight, and ends up breaking it. Or even, he tries to hide inside the drinks machine. Then Chucky comes along and starts to kick and shake this machine to get his brother out, causing it to dent and break. Guybrush triumphantly gets a bottle of root beer from the vandalized drinks machine and then shakes it up and sprays his brother with it. The kids run away from the scene of the crime. Then a maintenance man comes along and discovers to his horror a vandalized and beaten up drinks machine in need of repair. Maybe he gets out a hand truck and wheels it to the nearest convenient freight elevator down into the tunnels beneath the amusement park, cursing those pesky kids for making his life harder. Where is the freight elevator? Behind the church on Melee Island, through the door marked employees only. He brings it to the workshop and there it sits, until Guybrush comes and sees it for the second time. This, in my opinion, is maybe one of the strongest pieces of evidence to support the idea that this is an amusement park, let alone that it is all in the heads of these kids. Think about it. When we emerge on the back street in Melee, in Monkey Island 2, what do we see there now? Tape and orange cones, with a sign saying closed for construction. Maybe after all the ruckus of Guybrush and LeChuck going around Melee in Monkey Island 1, the Melee Island ride had to be closed until it was fixed. There are many pieces of evidence throughout the first two games that reference Disneyland. Or maybe point towards Big Whoop Amusement Park really being one of the many Disney amusement parks. And, as I already said, it's funny now that Lucasfilm and all its properties are owned by Disney. This bears some interest considering Gilbert has said many of the elements of Monkey Island came directly from or were borrowed and developed from the original Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, then inadvertently influenced the Pirates of the Caribbean movies later on, art imitating art. Gilbert has also said that he went on the ride many times as a child, as it was one of his favourites. He often wondered what it would be like to get out of the boat and head behind the scenes, or live in that world. Several of the areas in the game are very reminiscent of Disneyland rides and attractions. Take the Treehouse in Monkey Island 2. It's a dead ringer for the walk-through attraction Swiss Family Treehouse. Looking at images of the attraction and comparing them to the Treehouse in Monkey Island 2, it's easy to see where the reference came from. Most obviously, as I stated earlier, the tunnels underneath Dinky Island bear striking similarities to those found under Disney parks. The cement walls, the pipes, the back rooms, and of course, the places to emerge out into the park again once you've travelled to your destination. How about Walt the dog? This is a straight up reference to Walt Disney himself, and the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. That same dog has even crossed over into the feature film world, making an appearance in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. The strongest reference to the idea that this may actually be a Disney-based park comes in the form of the item found inside the chest we believe is the treasure of Big Whoop. It's a ticket. Specifically, it's an e-ticket. Anyone familiar with Disneyland will know about the e-ticket. The e-ticket is officially known as the e-coupon, which was a type of admission ticket used at Disneyland and Magic Kingdom theme parks before 1982. The system ran from A to E, with E being the most expensive. The e-ticket admitted the bearer to the newest, most advanced or popular rides and attractions, while the coupon system was phased out gradually with the introduction of passports, which granted customers unlimited rides once the fee was paid. The term e-ticket is still commonly used to describe cutting-edge or top-tier amusement park attractions. An e-ticket ride has also become a colloquial term for the most exhilarating experiences. So, maybe this is actually a great treasure to Kid Guybrush, the ability to stay longer and get on all the most exhilarating rides, to not have to leave his make-believe fantasy world so soon. And hey, Dinky Island? That sure sounds a lot like Disneyland, doesn't it? Finally, let's look at maybe the most damning piece of evidence that this is an amusement park. The ending of Monkey Island 2 itself. It might seem a little obvious to use it as an example, but this whole scene pulls back the curtain, pulls away the imaginary world, and reveals that it is actually all taking place in an amusement park. It's actually even right there in the art. A big archway with the words Big Whoop Amusement Park. It doesn't really get any more on the nose than that. Guybrush and LeChuck are revealed to be kids, and their parents scold Guybrush for running off, before saying, "Well, come on then, let's go ride the madly rotating Buccaneer." Presumably another ride at the park. In the background we can see a Ferris wheel, a refuse bin, a weenie restaurant, a gift shop, signs pointing to shows and rides, another marquee with the word freak in reference to freak shows that would be at carnivals, a ticket booth where presumably you could get an e-ticket if you so desired, and even what potentially appears to either be a puppet show box or a fortune teller machine. When you take the scene at face value, it's not trying to hide anything from us. It's telling you straight out, none of this was real, this is all just happening in the heads of kids at an amusement park. While some of you may be saying, but what about Elaine? And what about LeChuck's evil red electric eyes? It's all just a curse put on Guybrush. I do have a rebuttal to those 2 points, but I will return to those later. For now, I think this is all more than enough evidence to prove that this in fact is a pirate-based amusement park. So, if we can take it that the story is really set in an amusement park, how do we prove it is taking place in the present day? I actually think that many of the things I've put forward to prove that this is an amusement park actually help place the story in a more modern time. But considering Lake Compounce, the oldest continuously operating amusement park in North America, opened in 1846. This gives us a rather large time frame to narrow down. To really drive the point home, there are many other pieces of evidence that will help us place this story in the present day, at least contemporaneously to the 70s or 80s, or even the early 90s when these original games were released. The most obvious example that this is taking place in the present day is all the anachronisms within the series. Several of them I have already referenced, and I will reference several more as the video goes on. There are simply too many of them in the games to name out and explain all of them individually here, but I will provide several interesting examples for us to ponder over. But what is an anachronism? An anachronism is something or someone that is not in its correct historical or chronological time. It can be a thing, people, events, objects, language terms, and customs from different time periods. The most common type of anachronism is an object misplaced in time. But it may be a verbal expression, a technology, a philosophical idea, a musical style, a material, a plant or animal, a custom, or anything else associated with a particular period that is placed outside its proper temporal domain. Some anachronisms in media are unintentional and are a result of mistakes or not enough research into a particular time period. But another use of the concept of an anachronism can be intentional in its use, and a very interesting literary concept. A great example of an intentional anachronism is the use of Chuck Berry's Johnny Be Good in Back to the Future. Marty McFly, a boy from the 80s with a penchant for electric guitar, goes back in time to 1955 and ends up having to play music at a high school dance. He decides to entertain the crowd of 50s kids with a 50s song he knows.
It's an oldie where I come from.
But it turns out that Johnny Be Good is actually a song from 1958. He unintentionally influences the creation of the rock and roll hit when cousin of Chuck Berry, Marvin Berry, gets him on the phone to hear Marty play the song.
Marvin Berry, you know that new sound you looking for? Well, listen to this.
Of course, the anachronism in this situation is that the song Johnny Be Good isn't from 1955. The use of anachronisms in Monkey Island are very intentional. The point of them seems to be several clues that the game isn't taking place in pirate times. It also acts as an interesting style of set dressing. For reference, the golden age of piracy is said to have taken place between 1650 and 1730. So, anything that appears in the series beyond 1730 can be considered an anachronism. With that all in mind, let's look again at the iconic grog machine. Of course, not only did electricity not exist in the golden age of piracy, a temperature-controlled mechanical drinks dispenser is definitely not something pirates had access to. What's more, this grog machine is suspiciously familiar. Where have we all seen it before? Of course, it's quite similar in design to the famous red Coke machines. This grog machine has an interesting history within the development of Monkey Island. Ron has stated that it caused some potential legal issues that forced them to have to change the art asset a couple of times, as it too closely resembled a Coke machine and its trademark Coke wave. They wanted to set this game at an amusement park in a modern time underneath the guise of the golden age of piracy. Of course, one way to show us that Guybrush is a child using his imagination to change reality around him is to take a modern vending machine and then put a pirate drink like grog on the front. It is a great example of an anachronism and to show us some of the reality poking through. One of the main places we see many of the anachronisms throughout the games is within the inventory items we collect. These little sprites are vivid examples of many anachronistic items. These are all items that weren't yet invented in the golden age of piracy. Just some of them include a chrome hubcap, a matchbook, a martini, a library card, root beer, a rock and roll collector's plate featuring an image of Elvis, Brett mints, business card, seltzer bottle, staple remover, t-shirt, Cap'n Crunch cereal, hypodermic needle, balloon, cracker mix, latex gloves, TNT. And that's not to mention the several items we see in the world as well. Traffic cones, traffic signs, tiki lamps, high-tech security doors, Pillsbury Doughboy pictures, filing cabinets, security barriers, light-up signs, gas cookers, freight elevators, light switches, electric lights and bulbs, steel pipes and fittings, water valves, helium tank, a modern bin, and a telephone call box. All of these modern items in the inventory and around the world are more than enough evidence of anachronisms within the first two games. Though, when I spoke about signage earlier, I didn't talk specifically about the posters we see throughout the games, and how they could be considered anachronisms as well. For example, the modern poster as we know it dates back to somewhere around the 1840s, and in fact I believe all these posters are here to point that out. These posters include an advert for the library, a Vote Governor Marley poster, and this iconic circus poster in the alley behind Melee Island Church. The idea that in the golden age of piracy there would be some poster to tell pirates that reading is good and they should do it, it just seems so modern and educational, something that would be put up in schools for kids, especially in the 80s and 90s. A colour poster with a candidate's face on it, telling you to vote for them. That doesn't seem very piratey, does it? Why would pirates have a democratic vote for a governor? Finally, a circus. Well, the modern circus as we know it started in the mid-1700s, literally the end of the golden age of piracy. Many of the books you can check out in the Fat City Library contain modern anachronistic references to soda fountains, the term kangaroo court, cartoons, zippers, the IRS, social Darwinism, Jello, the Dewey Decimal System, record albums, the study of viruses, the woodchuck song, which also famously appears in Monkey Island 2 as a dialogue tree, surrealism, nylon, rock music, collectible toy trucks, zip codes, video games, and software piracy, amongst much else. There's many more genres of fiction and non-fiction like how-to books and self-help books and romance novels. But anachronisms aren't only tied to physical items. They can also be ways of thinking and talking, cultural norms, ideas, and brands. Many of the characters, including Guybrush throughout the first two games and beyond, use modern ways of talking and modern words in their sentences. Again, pointing out all of them would be an impossibility in a video essay like this, as there is so many of them throughout. But I think a touchstone for this idea that is enough to get the point across is Stan the used ship salesman. Stan is a bit of a fan favourite, his wild energy bursting from his body, his arms flail madly around as he rattles off marketing terms with a thirst to make a sale. His whole job and persona is an anachronism in itself, not just the words he uses. When trying to sell you a ship in Monkey Island 1, he names out lists of features included in some of these boats. There is even another sign on one of the boats in his shipyard that says fuel economy, which would be a modern term for modern vehicles that use fuel, not to describe an air-pushed or man-rowed boat, though I suppose those boats would actually be very economical fuel-wise. But yes, he is the living embodiment of an anachronism, his sleazy car salesman persona speaking a mile a minute nearly like a game show host. A very 21st century type of character. Some of the words and concepts he discusses include a heated crow's nest, porthole defoggers. He discusses a type of luxury elevator on a ship, all this and more. It's hard to fully describe the amount of modern lingo used in these games. Almost every line of dialogue is modern English. I suppose it reflects those who wrote it, who would have been modern people themselves. The spit contest runner is another person to point towards that uses a lot of modern terms and modern lingo. Finally, another obvious example is the maintenance men in brown boiler suits. They speak like your typical blue-collar workers. They even reference a truck, and they call Largo a butt, which is a very modern insult and term. Moving on, there are several references to modern media properties that would have not existed during the golden age of piracy, and all of these can be considered anachronisms as well, such as Indiana Jones's whip, which according to the item description is the whip as seen in Raiders, Temple, Holy Grail and the Young Chronicles. Even several references to previous and other LucasArts properties exist in a sort of meta way within the game. Sam and Max appear in Monkey Island 1 and 2, and in Monkey 1, you can ask Cobb the Pirate about the Lucasfilm Games title Loom, upon which he launches into a marketing speech regarding the game. Guybrush can even ring the LucasArts hint line, which the whole thing in itself, from using a phone to ringing a video game hint line, is an anachronism. But then furthermore, Guybrush asks the LucasArts employee, when is the secret weapons of the Luftwaffe going to ship? Guybrush even mentions Nintendo when LeChuck says he has a surprise for Guybrush, to which Guybrush replies, I don't suppose it's a Nintendo game. Guybrush can sing modern pop rock songs after inhaling helium. During these helium speeches, he can quote songs like Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees and That's the Way I Like It by KC and the Sunshine Band, amongst other modern day songs. There is even several meta-style modern references to media within the content of the game, many related to Star Wars, such as the LeChuck revealing to Guybrush that they are brothers, and the whole exchange they have, being almost a note-for-note take on the Darth Vader father reveal in Empire Strikes Back.
I am your father.
No. It's not true. That's impossible.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
Even after Guybrush uses the voodoo doll to dismember LeChuck partially, the zombie pirate begs him to take his mask off, so Guybrush will see the true face of his brother, much like Darth Vader asking Luke to take off his helmet in Return of the Jedi. Though these in-game references are not only specific to Star Wars, we also see references to Indiana Jones in the form of Guybrush using a crowbar and a rope to cross a bottomless pit, amongst others. There is even many in-jokes from the developers about other Lucasfilm games and LucasArts titles, such as references to Bobbin Threadbare from Loom, and the fine leather jackets that Indiana Jones attempts to sell in the Last Crusade graphic adventure game. Safe to say, the anachronism well runs deep and is layered almost beyond a detailed comprehension. If I tried to break down every individual anachronism and the meaning behind them, this video would be way too long. Safe to say, there is more than enough evidence in there to sink your teeth into and prove that this game is really taking place in the modern day. With all that in mind, so, what year do I think it's all taking place in? Considering one of the most modern references in the game is Indiana Jones's whip, and that they even reference the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which was released in March of 1992. A year after Monkey Island 2 released. Taking into account that Guybrush is 17 in Secret and 19 in Monkey 2, that would put the time frame for the first two games from 1990 to 1992, essentially contemporaneously of the games themselves. So, if the story takes place in the 90s, and at the end of Monkey Island 2 it is revealed that Guybrush and Chucky are actually kids, other than taking that at face value, and also as its own piece of evidence, how do we prove that they are kids beyond reasonable doubt? Yet again, there is a plethora of evidence to support this. Let's start with the droves of childish humour within the games. The series on a whole is filled with childish humour, goofiness, and general silly antics. It's in the DNA of the games, which is likely a direct correlation with Ron Gilbert's sensibilities himself. He has said in the past that he wanted the comedy in his games to be so funny that milk would shoot out your nose, which I think perfectly describes the humour. He has also said that the game was always a comedy, though he makes comedies with a serious story at its core.
Or was it always conceived as a comedy, or did the comedy just come naturally through the scenario with writing it with Tim Schafer and Dave Grossman?
No, it was always a comedy.
Okay.
It was a comedy from day one. I don't think I could ever do a serious game. Games can sometimes have, or stories, can have a serious underpinning to them. And I do tend to design things where that core story is funny. I don't like to design things that are just like farces from the beginning. And a great example I always use is Ghostbusters, right? At the core of that story is a serious story, right, about demons and the Hellgate and all this stuff, but they just layer all this comedy on top of it. And I tend to do games the same way, that at the core there's a serious story, but that it's, there's all this comedy laid on top of it. And Monkey Island was always conceived to be that way.
A comedy with a serious core is kind of like Ron himself, except flipped around. On the outside, Ron appears to be quite a serious man. Some would even go as far as to describe him as grumpy, not to mention his blog, which is named Grumpy Gamer. But if you spend any time at length listening to him talk or watch interviews, he seems to have a very childlike, funny centre and is quite a warm guy at his core. He is often cracking childish jokes with a certain whimsy. This is reflected in Monkey Island as a whole. Much of the dialogue and interactions in the series are flavoured with this same sensibility. The one-liners, the gross-out humour, the light-hearted but never mean jabs amongst much else. There is a lot of slapstick and visual comedy in the games as well, which all would appeal to a child's sense of humour, like the bucket of mud that drops on Largo's head. I remember first seeing this as a child and absolutely roaring with laughter at the sight with my sister. How about when Guybrush falls on his way into the Bloody Lip kitchen? Again, he hasn't seriously hurt himself, but it's cartoonish and funny the way he leads up to and catches his leg on the banister before plummeting to his fate. When he picks himself up, he starts to see stars around his head before shaking himself too. When he returns out of the kitchen later, he lands expertly on the deck before falling again and picking himself up, looking coyly around to see did anybody see him. It's all just so fun and childish. Many other examples of this slapstick humour exist throughout the series. Guybrush face planting on Dinky Island and his ship. Guybrush wearing a pot on his head before being shot out of a cannon and then hitting a pole. Guybrush spitting on Wally, Guybrush taking a comically large Q-tip out of his pants before placing it in a large monkey head's ear. Guybrush taking and placing large animals into his pants. It's all very fun and cartoonish. It certainly spoke to my sense of humour as a child, and maybe even shaped my sense of humour now. Even one of the jokes that could be considered a little problematic now, I think is actually coming from a place of childlike innocence. It's revealed as a joke that Largo wears a bra. If you think about it from the mind of a child who would be innocently giggling at the idea of a man wearing a woman's bra, and not yet having much world experience or tact, it's not really that big of a deal, and again, it's just a childish joke. It's not coming from a mean place. Many of the lines of dialogue are iconic and goofy too. A line that stands out to me is when you enter the shop on Melee Island, the old man behind the counter says, "Ahoy there, fancy pants." There are a lot of off-kilter jokes as well, such as when the lookout says, Guybrush looks more like a flooring inspector to him. Even some of the dialogue exchanges are humorous and full of childlike wonderment, such as the famous "How much wood would a woodchuck chuck?" exchange with Woody the Carpenter. It would be impossible to go through all dialogue and jokes individually, but if you've played the games, it's obvious that a light-hearted, childlike sense of humour is a touchstone in the series. I think a perfect example that shows Ron Gilbert was actively putting this childish humour in the games is represented in the part where Guybrush digs up a bone at a graveyard in Monkey Island 2. The scene is set. It's a dark, creepy night and lightning is flashing. Guybrush reaches into the grave he just dug up and triumphantly holds a bone in the air as the music crescendos. Suddenly, his pants fall down. It's completely out of left field and gives a random, light-hearted moment to an otherwise fairly thematically dark thing. It was actually the subject of controversy amongst the developers, as revealed in the developer's commentary of Monkey Island 2's Special Edition. Tim Schafer hated it and didn't want it in the game, but Ron pushed to leave it in.
This is another thing we fought over. I thought the pants thing, I didn't think that was funny.
I think the pants
and you thought it was the
hilarious.
best thing in the whole game.
I did, and I still do. I actually use this as an example sometimes when I'm
you used to think was funny and now realize it's not funny.
No, it's like the pinnacle of humor. It's an untoppable moment.
But what, did he pull his belt off in order to dig? Why is this? Why is that happening, Ron? Now tell us.
Something
because the game requires different levels. That you're sophisticated.
But why do his pants fall down? Did he use his belt to dig? See,
the problem is you're trying to justify it too much. It's just funny. Just roll with it.
It's fancy. About pencil.
It's just a stupid computer game, Tim.
Oh, see, that's what I'm saying. I think that could have been a really deep moment. His pants fell for a reason.
I think the childish sense of humour that permeates the games is not only a stylistic choice, but I think it shows that it is taking place in the mind of a child. The humour is the way Guybrush sees the world, through the lens of a kid. But proving the characters are children doesn't just come from the humour they exude. Many of them act childish as well, which I actually think is a better touchstone to help prove that they are kids. Kids can be sweet-natured, funny, random, and have huge imaginations, but kids are kids and can often be pestilent and sometimes quite mean, doing bold things they shouldn't, stealing things, telling little lies, getting into fights, breaking things and breaking other kids' toys, and holding on to grudges over silly, insignificant things. Like much else in the series, there is far too many examples to name out, but I will give you a few. Let's look at the scene where LeChuck is about to lower Guybrush and Wally into a vat of acid. LeChuck says to Guybrush, "You are in a heap of trouble and you will pay for what you did to me." He is scolding Guybrush and holding on to a grudge over what Guybrush did to him in the first game. Guybrush hose down Chucky with a bottle of fizzed up root beer. Imagine if you were a child and your brother or sister did that to you. You'd hate them. And now Chucky is going to get his own back on Guybrush as a sort of revenge. Chucky holds even further grudges against Guybrush at the end of Monkey Island 2. When Guybrush asks Chucky, "How come you hate me as much as you obviously do?" LeChuck reveals to Guybrush he holds a grudge against Guybrush for breaking his toy when he says, "Well, you remember the time you broke my Junior Ultra Soldier Commando assault vehicle?" Guybrush questions Chucky's motives. "Do you really think a truck is more important than your own brother?" Chucky states it wasn't a truck, it was a Junior Ultra Commando assault vehicle. This shows a childish grudge LeChuck has held onto for years. It's insignificant to an adult because it's just a toy, probably inexpensive, but as a kid, it's your whole world, one of your few prized possessions. So it's easy to see how Chucky would act childish about it and hold it against Guybrush. It's because they are kids. Guybrush also steals a lot of things in the games. He is bordering on kleptomaniac at times, but such is the nature of the point-and-click genre, I suppose. One of my favourite examples of this, that also has a great payoff, is when Guybrush steals Wally's monocle to give to Captain Dread. The fact that Wally is possibly a younger, more naive, nerdy kid than Guybrush shows how mean some kids can be when Guybrush takes the monocle for his own gain and leaves Wally blind to the world. That alone would be enough to show how childish Guybrush is, but later on in the game, when Wally is locked up at LeChuck's fortress, Guybrush has a moment to level with Wally about who stole the monocle and pulls a typical kid move, passing the blame and saying Dread stole it, conveniently leaving out that Captain Dread only has it because Guybrush stole it and then gave it to him. It's just so on the nose. I even remember myself as a child trying to cover up the truth if I broke something by coming up with some outlandish story or trying to pass the blame. It happens all the time with kids, and is a surefire example that these characters in the game are actually children. Many of the other characters act childish as well. Just one example of this is the Cannibals and Herman Toothrot. Both have their own forts on Monkey Island, and they leave each other passive-aggressive memos or notes because one group stole an item from another. Instead of coming to a compromise, neither of them are willing to give in to each other. It's very childish. The forts remind me of how kids will build clubhouses, dens or forts, and then group together, for example, girls against guys or something. One group taking some special item from the other's den, and then maybe playing pranks on each other. Instead of confronting each other like adults, they would leave notes for each other instead. Many movies have portrayed this dynamic of clubhouse and group of kids banding together against the other. Finally, there is many optional pieces of dialogue throughout the series that can be missed. But another one that shows them acting childish is the whole exchange between Guybrush and LeChuck in the church on Melee. LeChuck and Guybrush get into a verbal back and forth after Elaine runs off, when LeChuck states, "I can't believe your audacity." Guybrush has an option to reply, "Well, I can't believe your stupidity." What proceeds to happen is a childish, retort-based back and forth between the two. It starts with the prefix, "Well, I can't believe your," and then the pair fill in the last word with different insults that increase in their weirdness until LeChuck has had enough. That mirrors the type of back and forth that young kids would do to annoy each other, probably best known by the phrase, "I know you are, but what am I?" It's pretty clear this is what LeChuck and Guybrush are engaging in, and I think it's a great piece of evidence to support the idea of them being kids acting childish. What about all the wild claims they make and the over-exaggerated stories? Kids often bend the truth and over-exaggerate things that they can do or have done. Sometimes they do this because they are imaginative, other times they want to seem cool, and to them, wild claims of their skills or over-exaggerating stories is just one way they can think of to achieve this. Look at the way Guybrush often claims he can hold his breath for 10 minutes. Considering the current world record for breath holding is 24 minutes, the idea that Guybrush can casually hold his breath for 10 seems wild. He makes it known throughout the series to anyone that'll listen. A more typical length that the average person without any training can hold their breath would be about 2 minutes or so. Stretching that to 10 would take considerable training and time. It just seems like a childish exaggeration. How about the time Guybrush claims he died in a vat of acid? In Monkey Island 2, the majority of the game takes place in the form of a flashback story being told to Elaine by Guybrush as he hangs over the pit on Dinky Island. Elaine is quick to correct him. Of course, if he did die in the vat of acid, then how is he here now telling the story to Elaine? He exaggerated the way a child would. Interestingly, it also calls into question most of what happens in Monkey Island 2. Because how much of this flashback story Guybrush tells can we actually believe? How much of it is true? In this sense, Guybrush is an unreliable narrator, because of his tendency to over-exaggerate his skills and achievements. Even at the start of Monkey Island 2, he tells his LeChuck evaporating story to Bart and Fink on the shore of Scab, much to their dismay. Guybrush bends the truth and embellishes the story, making him out to be more heroic than he actually was, saying LeChuck begged for mercy, and curiously left out the part where he messed up Elaine's plan, or the part where he got his butt kicked around Melee Island by LeChuck. It's just another thing a child would do, telling his friends how cool he was when he did a thing to impress them. On the point that they are children, I have been specifically talking about LeChuck and Guybrush, but what of the other kids, if there are any? I definitely think when you look at the cast of characters throughout the games, definitely some of them have the qualities stated above that could mean that they are also kids. It's also easy to imagine, if Guybrush was a kid hanging out at his favourite pirate-based amusement park, surely there would be other parents bringing other children around, and who knows, maybe some of these kids are friends of his, and they are all playing the same make-believe game. Remember, the sword-fighting pirates on Melee? Well, they can remark to Guybrush to get into character and play along with the game. Maybe all of them are kids taking part in a sword-fighting activity around the park. Some of these kids might be older and younger than Guybrush as well. Remember, when you were a kid, if you were at some event or maybe on a holiday in a resort with your parents and no one else was around, you would play with and become friends with the other kids, regardless of their ages, because aside from all the other adults, they are the only people that you can truly relate to. Look at Wally. He is very short and kind of naive and polite, like a small kid. Guybrush feels sorry for him, or even protective of him, and even calls him a little guy at one stage. The way a slightly older kid would look out for a younger one. How about the fisherman at the pier? He has that perfectly cocky, cool kid attitude and challenges you to a show of skill. You know the type, the kid that's like, I bet you can't do this. What about Meat Hook? He is very childlike and scared of a parrot. The way he is written, his dialogue, it even kind of reads childish. He then suddenly looks up to Guybrush when Guybrush proves he is more brave than he is. I could go on, but what about Elaine then? Well, Elaine does actually seem older and more mature than Guybrush. But she does find him cute in a way, so maybe Elaine is like a year older. But she's not above getting into character and playing a make-believe pirate game with Guybrush and the others. Think about when you were a kid. If no one your age was around, but other kids both old and young were, you'd play with them. I know when I was a kid, I would often be in situations where I'd be playing games with kids a few years older and a few years younger than me. So the idea of Elaine also being a kid, but a bit older and not above joining in the make-believe game, doesn't seem so far-fetched. Even look at LeChuck. He's definitely older than Guybrush by a year, maybe 2. He also has a crush on Elaine. But Elaine clearly doesn't reciprocate this. Maybe this is another sore spot between Chucky and Guybrush. Finally, another piece of evidence is that many of the characters refer to Guybrush as kid, or son, or boy, amongst much else. It might be a bit on the nose, but I think the fact that many of the characters who look older or act older will often address Guybrush as if he is a kid or a young child. It speaks for itself. I think it's telling us again directly that Guybrush is really a kid. There's also many times that Guybrush is given several dialogue options of what he wants to say, but then he ends up saying something different. Kind of like how a kid would want to say something to sound cool or to be able to verbally speak up for themselves and have it planned out in their heads, but then they wouldn't have the confidence to say so. There are a few of these throughout the series. The example I will give is the one at the end of Monkey Island 2. After being scolded by his parents for running off, Guybrush is disorientated about suddenly being a child in an amusement park. Then he is given the option to speak up for himself. On selecting one of these options, your choice is overridden when the 2 kids say, "No, sir," as if they are complying with an authority figure, the way a child would comply with a parent, for fear of repercussions. I think I have sufficiently made my case here in regards to the second layer. This is in fact taking place at an amusement park with some kids playing make-believe in the present day. But there is one more thing to prove. I said at the start of this section that in the second layer it is revealed that all of this is taking place in the imagination of an orphan boy. So Guybrush is an orphan? But how do we know this? Well, it's actually quite easy to prove. There are strong pieces of evidence in the dialogue to suggest it, along with several more interesting pieces of world building and further lore to flesh out the concept. Let's start with this dialogue exchange between Guybrush and LeChuck during Act 4 of Monkey Island 2, where Guybrush is hanging over a vat of acid, and LeChuck is taunting him before sending Guybrush to his doom. Now, this piece of dialogue can actually be missed, as all of the options can't be tried in one playthrough. They are randomized, and LeChuck only lets you ask 2 or 3 of them before getting bored and leaving the room. So, Guybrush is asking LeChuck to explain how his intricate machine works. But you also have the option to ask LeChuck fairly innocuous questions. One of these that may pop up in a playthrough is, where do babies come from? LeChuck quickly retorts, in your case, the orphanage. Now, knowing the humour of the game and the often zany and out there non sequiturs, the question and reply at face value doesn't really raise any eyebrows. Maybe LeChuck is just being mean, and maybe Guybrush is just being childish. But I am of the belief that almost nothing in the games has been put in without first careful consideration. There is meaning in every aspect of the first 2 games. Look at it from the point of view that they are kid brothers at an amusement park trying to poke fun at each other. It is again right in front of us in plain English. In your case, the orphanage. LeChuck is outright telling Guybrush that he was adopted. he is doing it to hurt Guybrush's feelings. The animosity that Chucky would have towards his stepbrother for coming in and maybe taking the attention away from him is easy to see. Another childish grudge for Chucky to hold onto. But there is more evidence still. Let's look at Booty Island and the hallucination scene. Guybrush attempts to climb the big tree only to fall and hit his head and then have a hallucination. In it, he sees both his parents as skeletons. They sing the Bone Song or Them Bones. Guybrush then accuses them of abandoning him. It's not a mistake that they appear more than once as skeletons. We all know that skeletons represent our own mortality, as when we die and decompose, all that will be left is our skeletons. Skeletons represent death. Think of any depiction of the character Death itself. It's always a cloaked skeleton. Guybrush accuses them of leaving him. Well, maybe he was young and his parents died, and he was too young to understand and mistook it for them abandoning him. If his parents died, then it would be likely he would end up in an orphanage to be adopted by new parents. The people he sees and interacts with at the end of Monkey Island 2 are his parents, but they aren't his biological ones. They are Chucky's parents. The fact that they asked LeChuck to hunt him down shows they dote on Guybrush and worry about him, adding more fuel to Chucky's fire of hate for Guybrush. How can we further prove that they are not Guybrush's biological parents? Well, through the voodoo dolls in the game. What is needed for a voodoo doll? Something of the thread, something of the head, something of the body, and something of the dead. When Guybrush makes a voodoo doll of LeChuck, he borrows the head off his deceased dad. Notice how no other parts of Mum or Dad's body are missing. So how did LeChuck make a voodoo doll of Guybrush then? He would need something of one of Guybrush's dead relatives in order to make a voodoo doll of Guybrush. Thus, these skeletons of the parents we meet at the end simply cannot be Guybrush's biological parents, making him an orphan from previously deceased parents. The fact we borrow Dad's head and the voodoo doll of LeChuck works means these are Chucky's biological parents. I think it goes without saying, based on all that, it's clear that Monkey Island is taking place in the mind of an orphan child playing make-believe at an amusement park in the present day with his stepbrother and other kids. Though, one more thing struck me when I looked back at all this information gathered here together. It is that some of the locations in the first two Monkey Island games give me some reason to believe that this could all be taking place in not only an amusement park, but maybe in Kid Guybrush's hometown. Places like the library on Fat Island and Scab Island as a whole, they don't quite seem to fit an amusement park. Why would there be a library at an amusement park, for example? Or looking at all the locations on Scab, particularly in Woodtick, well, what's there? A hotel, a laundromat, a carpenter's shop, a cartographer, a bar and grill? These all seem like businesses you would have in a small town. Why would an amusement park need a laundromat? Even the call box found in the middle of the Dinky Island jungle. Even though they are largely being phased out of our modern world with the proliferation of mobile phone technology, telephone boxes once were a thing widely used the world over. Maybe this call box is one of them, and it's somewhere in Guybrush's local area. I don't want to spend too much time on this, because there are many pieces of evidence that can be looked at from this angle, but it is possible that the whole world established in Monkey Island 1 and 2 is taking place in the imaginary world Guybrush has created for himself in everyday life. Maybe to escape his rather sad reality. Yes, many of the locations take place at an amusement park, as I think I have adequately shown. But I was just struck with the idea when it came to the end of this section, that the world established could be larger than we think. Many kids make believe wherever they are. Say a local forest suddenly becomes a world unto itself. Kids play and make stories wherever they go. It's one of the beauties of being a child. But I digress. Where does this leave the secret? Is the secret simply that it takes place in the imagination of a child? No. Not exactly. Bill Tiller, a background artist on Curse of Monkey Island, made a statement regarding what the secret of Monkey Island is back in 2003. He stated, "Well, this is all I know, and I learned it from Larry Ahern and David Grossman. Ron went to Disneyland, rode the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, thought it was cool, and wondered what it would be like to get out of the boat and explore the Pirates' Cave and Village. Calvin and Hobbes was very popular back then. It is a daily cartoon strip about a boy and his stuffed tiger going on all sorts of adventures and imagining themselves in all sorts of different things like dinosaurs, spacemen, and monsters. I speculate that Ron combined the two together, Pirates of the Caribbean and Calvin and Hobbes, and created Guybrush. I was told that the ending of MI2 was originally going to be the ending of MI1, but David Grossman and Tim Schafer didn't like it and talked Ron out of it. Then I heard from Larry Ahern that 2 or 3 months before MI2 was supposed to be done, an ending had still not been decided upon. And about then, Ron decided to go with the amusement park ending he was originally going to use in MI1. The explanation I heard is that Guybrush was lost in the Pirates ride at Big Whoop amusement park the whole time, imagining the whole adventure. Then Chucky, his older mean brother, goes in and pulls him back to reality. The end. And that magical lightning that comes out of Chucky's eyes and Elaine waiting by the hole on Dinky Island was put there just in case there was to be a Monkey Island 3. The secret is that the MI world is not real. Now, I have no clue how Ron would have written his way out of the MI2 ending. He either knows and isn't telling, or he doesn't know and he isn't telling you he doesn't know. Or he has a bunch of ideas of what he would do and isn't telling you that either. That is a bigger secret than what the secret of Monkey Island is. But the secret being that the whole MI world is imagined sucks. Why? Because we want the world of Monkey Island to be real, not in a kid's imagination. I think almost all of this can be taken to be true. This in many ways just confirms the make-believe theory to be true. It doesn't seem possible that Ron's intentions for the narrative to not be common knowledge amongst those who were involved in making the Monkey Island games and other LucasArts employees. Ron would have had to have conversations with the artists so they would know the context behind what they are drawing and why. I am sure that all these ideas were shared and discussed and dissected around the office long after Ron left. But I do think Ron took the secret with him. I think Bill and most of us miss the point. The secret itself isn't specifically about the revelation at the end of Monkey Island 2. And I don't think Ron put an out in the game by way of Elaine and LeChuck's evil glowing eyes to leave room for a sequel. I do think it's all part of the secret, but the secret itself is actually the meaning behind it all. That's why you have to dig deeper still, down to the third layer of Monkey Island. This is where the truth lies. The third layer is where the point of it all comes together. The third layer is where the secret is revealed. What is the third layer? The third layer is the game itself, what it is trying to say to us, and the lessons we are learning while we play. But how do I prove the game is talking to us? Pretty simply, really, with the fourth wall. What is the fourth wall? Well, the fourth wall is the barrier between us and the characters we are watching in movies, games, TV shows, and theatre. The idea refers to the imaginary wall at the front of the stage, separating the audience from the performers. Conveniently, the Monkey Island games and point and clicks are set up in a way like theatre. All we see is the stage, i.e. the rooms and the set dressing around the rooms, is like set dressing in theatre. Then, it's not a stretch to think of the characters as actors. In fact, Ron and the team actually refer to the sprites as actors, and, if I'm not mistaken, they are written as so in the Scum engine. They are delivering a script in the same way actors would in a play. But the fourth wall separates us from the actors, They don't see us, the audience. So how is the game talking to us? Well, by breaking the fourth wall. Breaking the fourth wall means doing or saying something that explicitly or implicitly acknowledges the artificiality of the environment and the fact that the actors and the audience are both aware of it.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
Guybrush shows that he is aware he is in a game several times throughout the series, and he often addresses us directly. He will often stop and look at the screen to talk to us or look directly at us, implicating us in whatever gag or happening that is going on in the game. A great example is the iconic scene at the Monkey Head on Monkey Island. Guybrush pulls out the comically large Q-tip from his pants to open the monkey head. He wriggles the Q-tip around for a moment, and then he stops. He looks directly at us. Even though his sprite is made up of simple pixels and shows little in the way of subtle facial expressions, the timing and the implication is loud and clear. He knows how insanely silly this all is, and he is taking a moment, looking directly at us, someone who he can identify with, and saying, "What the hell am I doing? This is insane." How about in the forest on Dinky Island when Guybrush uses the forest call box? He explicitly states that he knows he is in a game to the LucasArts hint line. When he calls up Chester, he can state, "I'm lost in the Dinky Island jungle in Monkey 2. This could be taken as a non sequitur, so let me prove it further. Guybrush proves to us he knows he is in a game when he is under the sea searching for the monkey head. After picking it up, when you try to return to the surface, Guybrush says, "This monkey head is too heavy to carry to the surface. Considering this game has no drop verb, I'm doomed." So yes, he knows he is in a game. The fact that Guybrush and other characters break the fourth wall several times proves that the characters are speaking to us. But what of the game itself? The game speaks to us too. The game breaks the fourth wall. For example, when Guybrush pacifies the piranha poodles in Monkey Island 1 with the spiked meat and they fall asleep, suddenly a large message appears on the screen saying, "Important notice, these dogs are not dead, they are only sleeping." No animals were harmed during the production of this game. Aside from being a funny joke, it shows us that the game is speaking to us. There are many examples of this. For example, when Cobb is asked about Loom, he launches into a detailed marketing blurb about the game. He is breaking the fourth wall by doing this. But then a message flashes on screen, the word advertisement. Again, it's a funny joke, but also clearly an example of the game itself breaking the fourth wall. One of the most memorable for me is after you complete both games. Messages flash up on the screen, giving us suggestions on what we should do now. The most famous of them turns up in both games and simply states, "Turn your computer off and go to sleep." The video game is literally talking directly to us, breaking the fourth wall. So if the game and the characters are all breaking the fourth wall and talking directly to us, what are they actually trying to tell us? What lesson is the game imparting on us? Well, herein lies the secret to Monkey Island. I think the answer can be found in the stark tonal difference between Monkey 1 and Monkey 2, that I think directly relates to the secret. Monkey 1, for the large part, is very light-hearted and fun, youthful, energy in abundance. It has a simple story with a simple premise. A boy that wants to be a pirate. The characters are always quick with a joke, and are for the most part actually quite nice to Guybrush, outside of a few fun jabs. Everyone is happy to be there, content in this zany pirate world they inhabit. This, in contrast, is almost completely different in Monkey Island 2. The world has changed around Guybrush. Characters are jaded, cynical, and mean. Guybrush himself has changed. He is older and more full of himself, telling anyone who will listen his LeChuck evaporating story to stroke his own ego, and the people are sick of hearing it. People are constantly in a nastier mood, tired of the world they inhabit. They have little time to give to Guybrush. Even the relationship with Elaine ended in misery, a breakup that has caused a rift between them. Guybrush is out to prove that he is more than just a one-trick pony. He feels compelled to prove himself as a worthy pirate by finding the biggest treasure of them all, Big Whoop. LeChuck is even more angry and crooked than his ghostly form in Monkey Island 1. His zombified sprite and the new form represents the decay that has happened, a world falling apart at the seams. Guybrush finds Big Whoop, and it turns out to be just that, a big whoop. None of it mattered, because none of it was real. It was all a dream created by a young boy at an amusement park. There is a lingering dread of death over the whole second game. The theme permeates almost every aspect of it. Death represents physical death. It can relate to the death of a loved one, like Guybrush's real parents. Imagery of skeletons and gravestones and decay are present throughout the second game. The theme of death relates directly to the death of Guybrush's innocence, of his whimsy and wonder, the death of his imagination. Guybrush is starting to see behind the curtain. He is starting to see that none of this is real. Reality is poking through. The things that once excited him don't give him the same thrill anymore in the way they once did in Monkey Island 1. I think this stark difference in the games was planned. I actually think it directly correlates with the idea that Guybrush himself is growing older from Monkey Island 1 to Monkey Island 2. He's growing up. He is beginning to see the real world behind the imaginary one he has created in the amusement park he loves to go to. We think Guybrush is 17 in the first game and 19 in the second game. Well, I've proved beyond reasonable doubt that they are actually kids. So I say Guybrush is actually 7 years old in the first game and 9 years old in the second. In Monkey Island 1, Guybrush is naive and completely enveloped in his imagination. A young child of 7, completely convinced of the fun, happy world he has created for himself. But in Monkey Island 2, he is older now, a kid of 9, on the cusp of double digits. Remember, 2 years to a child is a lifetime. They do grow up so fast, but time to them runs so slowly. So a lot of growing up happens over a short period of time, mentally and physically. What happens to kids who grow up? The things they once loved suddenly become boring or not cool to do anymore. Or toys they once loved suddenly are for babies. I think this is beginning to happen to Guybrush as the second game begins. He is starting to lose his innocence. Maybe the original Monkey Island 3A would have dealt with him coming to terms with growing up. Maybe it still will. It's curious that this idea that Guybrush was growing up was referenced and even set in motion in the first Monkey Island game. I was struck by this line of dialogue the Voodoo Lady says, which lends to the idea that it was planned as a trilogy all along, or, like Bill Tiller stated, that the amusement park ending was actually meant for the first game's ending. After visiting the Voodoo Lady and asking her to tell him about his future, the Voodoo Lady tells Guybrush some things he will do throughout the game and then ominously remarks, "You will see things best left unseen. You will hear things better left unheard. You will learn things better left unlearned." She stops there and tells Guybrush the time is not right to know, and to come back later when he knows his purpose. Later, when Guybrush returns after Elaine is kidnapped, the Voodoo Lady reveals what she is holding on to. She says, "Now go and find the one that loves you, but be warned, not of LeChuck, of yourself and what you will find. What you will find out about yourself and your world. It will terrify you." I think this quote is a direct reference to Guybrush discovering that the world is all make-believe and that he is really an orphan kid. And both of those facts will destroy his innocence, grow him up, and terrify him. Even the second game, the Voodoo Lady continues this train of thought by revealing to Guybrush that Big Whoop isn't just a treasure. It contains the secret to another world. Find that world and you'll be able to escape LeChuck forever. I think this idea is kind of metaphorical and can be taken as a means to return to reality. or that finding the treasure will ultimately show him the real world around him, rather than the imaginary one he has created, thus forcing Guybrush to grow up and come to terms with his childhood, enough that he would be able to then escape the bullying of LeChuck by being older and wiser and no longer tormented by him. Now, there is another scene, which probably through osmosis, I actually thought it appeared in the game. I was actually fully convinced I witnessed it as a child, until I searched through the footage of my full playthrough and couldn't find it. A quick Google search brought up the interview with Ron Gilbert and a deep dive into the source code of Monkey Island 1 and 2 conducted by the Video Game History Foundation, which is well worth watching, by the way. They unearthed these interesting close-up versions of the LeChuck fortress scenes where Largo informs LeChuck of Guybrush's progress. The close-ups were cut due to limited disk space, but the dialogue remained in normal cutscenes in the game, all but one cutscene, which seems to have been removed from the game, in which LeChuck talks directly about the treasure of Big Whoop and why it concerns him that Guybrush might find it. Let's look at it. LeChuck addresses Largo and states, "I hear that Guybrush is looking for the lost treasure of Big Whoop. This be true?" Largo replies, "Well, yes sir, but what good can a chest full of money do him?" LeChuck replies, "It is not the treasure that is important. It is what is buried beneath the treasure that concerns me. He must not find the treasure of Big Whoop." LeChuck is kind of afraid that Guybrush discovers that his world is a lie, because he will no longer hold power over Guybrush. Is there even a hint of care for Guybrush in his words? Worried for Guybrush that he finds Big Whoop, finds out that he is adopted? It's almost as if he's taking pity on Guybrush. Big Whoop is the revelation that Guybrush isn't a pirate living in pirate times, and that this is all a lie. It's curious that this scene wasn't implemented back in the game, though I remember it somewhere in the recesses of my mind as if it was always there. The special editions of Monkey Island 2 in the audio files of the game even include the voice-acted lines of dialogue, but they were not used, and this scene was not re-implemented into the game. It's speculated that this scene was cut due to it maybe giving away the ending too soon. In my opinion, Guybrush doesn't know that he is adopted, and that both LeChuck and the Voodoo Lady's comments point towards this fact. They both know more than they are letting on, and Guybrush only vaguely remembers in a dream that his parents abandoned him. This is the death that permeates the second Monkey Island game. It is the death of being a child, the death of innocence, and the start of a transition to becoming a grown-up. So finally, where does that leave us? What is the secret of Monkey Island? Taking everything I've said into account, we have the imaginary layer on top, the make-believe story that Guybrush is making. We have the reality in the layer below it, that Guybrush is an orphan boy playing make-believe at his favourite amusement park. And then we have the game itself, showing us the death of his innocence, while also trying to tell us something. I think the secret is a lesson. I think the secret is like a secret to life. A secret that us, the audience, can take away with us long after the computer has been turned off. The secret to Monkey Island is to look at life through the eyes of a child. To remain youthful, to never grow up, to always stay curious and ask questions, to have a thirst to learn new things, to try new things, to experience new things, to laugh at silly jokes, to make silly jokes, and to never forget how to use your imagination, to never stop playing or being playful, to enjoy play. Life's a game and we should all play it. Build and create, imagine and reimagine, see the wonder in every little thing around you. Take it all in and live in every moment. Live your life to its fullest, for after all, we are all just monkeys on this island we call Earth. The secret of Monkey Island is to remain childlike in your life, to not let the death of innocence or the strain of reality take away that wonderful gift that we all have as children. The secret of Monkey Island is a secret to a long and happy life. Look at life through the eyes of a child. That's the lesson to take away. Suddenly, it all makes sense. This secret pulls it all together. The layers, the imaginary, the reality, and the message. It allows the imaginary to be a valid takeaway from the game. In fact, it makes the make-believe arguably the most important aspect of the game. The secret tells you to believe it. If you want the world of Monkey Island to be real, then simply think it. Hold on to your childlike, playful imagination and just imagine it's real. Just like how Gene Wilder sung in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination.
But it also teaches you to not forget to engage with the world around you. The reality outside of your imagination exists. Guybrush is a kid, and that's okay that he is. He needs to be able to come to terms with his sadness and feelings of abandonment and create a good relationship with those around him. It also gives legitimacy to the sequels. How? Well, remember Elaine waiting by the hole on Dinky Island and LeChuck's glowing red eyes? They were put there in case they wanted to make sequels, right? Yes, but there's more to it. What does it suggest in Kid Guybrush's reality? I think these 2 points suggest the continuation of play and give way perfectly to the light-hearted sequels that happened after as one possible future. The future where Guybrush doesn't grow up and lose his imagination. Guybrush is confronted by his step-parents, and they are taking him off to do another activity as a family, or maybe even bringing him home. The game is over. The pirate game the kids are playing has to be put on hold. The same way when your parents collected you from your friend's house, the game you were playing was put on hold, paused, like a video game, only to be picked up later the next time you got to play with your friends again. Elaine and LeChuck are simply continuing to play after the reality of home time steps in. Maybe Elaine just continues the game without Guybrush for a while, with other kids in the park, until she has to go home. This is what I believe those two outs represent. Chucky is just looking at us and saying, I'm still playing. The sequels get to be a reflection of that. They are just the kids playing the next chapter in their make-believe game. They are the future where Guybrush doesn't lose his imagination. They are more light-hearted to show that Guybrush and company came back again to continue their make-believe pirate game on a different day. Still acting childish, still playing make-believe, and still setting off on many more pirate adventures. This take allows the sequels to exist in the canon and not to be disregarded. It also allows to explore the idea of a day when Guybrush grows up and loses his imagination. So, will Return deal with this secret? Will Return look at the idea that Guybrush grew up and lost his playfulness? Then, will he have to rediscover it in the game as we play along with him? Will he rediscover this secret to Monkey Island that he forgot? Possibly. I think the fact that the new Monkey Island game seems to accept the sequels as part of its canon shows me that all of what I've said could be true. We certainly don't need to wait long now to find out what it all means, and it will be interesting to look back on this video with whatever Return to Monkey Island reveals. What's most interesting to me about this secret is how it's changed my perception from when I was a child. I know my younger self would have agreed when Bill Tiller said, the secret being that the whole MI world is imagined sucks. Because I vividly remember playing the end of Monkey Island 2 for the first time and being shocked to the core. Sitting there as those messages telling me to turn off my computer and go outside flashed on screen. I couldn't believe that it was all made up. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want the game to be over. I didn't want it to not be real. I loved the world so much, and I loved the characters and how happy it all was. It was an escape from reality for my childlike mind. I could be a swashbuckling hero like Guybrush, but with me coming to the conclusion that the secret is to stay young at heart, it now means so much more to me as an adult. I see beyond the simple theory that it is just that it's all imagined or not imagined. I can now see behind the curtain myself. I can see now that the games have a beautiful message to impart on the player. I can see that it's important for me to be able to believe the imagined is real, to let myself get lost in the world of Monkey Island and any other games I play, and to fully enjoy that. But it's also okay to engage with reality and search for the beauty around me in the people I know and the places I visit and the things that I do. To accept that in order to fully enjoy reality, you have to be able to tap into your inner child and see the world the way a child would. When I heard the announcement of Return to Monkey Island, I broke down crying. But these tears were tears of joy, tears of childlike glee. It gave me the happiness I felt as a kid playing these games, reminded me that being silly and playful is a joy of life. It actually gave me reason to kickstart this YouTube channel. It gave me a reason to return to Monkey Island after holding off on it for so many years. It actually helped me kick right out of a stupor I was in. Being starkly honest, I was at a pretty low point in my life. It probably was the lowest I've ever been, and the return announcement happened to coincide with me pulling myself up out of it. It was like a jolt of lightning in a way. It made me want to get up and go out into the world again and take more stock of the world around me and the people and things in it. And to start just doing more things that I've held off on for so many years. It was a breath of fresh air in my life. It reminded me to be alive. It reminded me of how my dad introduced me to video games as a child and set me off on a lifelong love of all things gaming. I suddenly felt young again when Return was announced, which makes the revelation of this secret hit so much harder. It gave me rise to reconnect more with my family. One night, shortly after the announcement, I sat with my dad listening to records talking about life and death. I hadn't really sat down and connected with him in many years, and never really did in this way. The record that was on was a Byrds record, a compilation of some of their songs throughout the 60s. My dad and I are both big fans of the Byrds. We both love the sound of the band. I have always felt it's the sound of nostalgia. My dad introduced me to them as a kid. While we were conversing, suddenly I was struck by a melody on the record player. It seemed familiar, yet I hadn't heard the song before, though I didn't dare disturb the flow of our conversation by asking what the song was, so I left the beautiful music be the background to what we were saying. It somehow felt very emotional, as we were talking about life and death, and I thought about a day in the future when he would no longer be here. I was choked up. Later on, when we both went off to our beds, I couldn't stop thinking about the song and the future. I went back to the record player and looked through the song titles. After finding the song, I lay in bed in the darkness and listened to it several times in a row. It moved me to floods of tears. I couldn't sleep, and I kept listening. It was tears of both sadness of life's eventual future, and also a release and letting go of everything negative that had come before in my life. The song was a cover of a Bob Dylan song called My Back Pages, and the refrain hit me like a ton of bricks. Ah, but I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Suddenly the meaning of it all comes into sharp focus. Monkey Island pleads with you to not forget to stay young at heart. And well, if that isn't the secret of Monkey Island, at least that's the secret that Monkey Island has taught me. I'm Dangerous Lee, I salute you all, and thanks for watching. Hi there everyone, this is Dangerously, and I just wanted to say at the end of the video here, thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, would you please consider subscribing to my channel. I hope to do more videos like this and other gaming related content in the future. Comment down below and let me know what you thought of this video, and also share some of your own personal history with the Monkey Island series. I always love chatting with people about Monkey Island. Anyway, I salute you all and thank you so much. Goodbye.